Count them up. That is 7 winners in a row for the St. Louis Blues as they defeat the Montreal Canadiens by a final score of 6. Yes, 6-1. This is the Blues Hub post-game show. I'm your host, Ethan Hannaford, joined tonight by Thomas Welch, and we are going to get to all of it here in just a moment. But before we do, we have to remind you that the Blues Hub post-game show is presented by Hot Shots. St. Louis is home for all the games, all the time since 1990. Find yours at hotshotsnet.com. Thomas, what was it, a week ago, I think, that it was you and I together doing the post-game show after an electric overtime win against the Vancouver Canucks. And here we are a week later against another playoff caliber team. They said that this one was arguably just as big. I know that they're in the opposite conference, but there was a lot of talk that this was a huge one for the playoff implications. And well, we saw arguably the best Blues team we've seen during this red-hot stretch, and they completely annihilate the Montreal Canadiens tonight.
Yeah, I mean, just a fantastic performance like we've grown accustomed to over these last couple of weeks from the St. Louis Blues, but it's always nice that they do it in front of the fans as well. But like you said, Montreal Canadiens kind of on the other side of the playoff hunt, but still just as hot. They're making a push just like we are, so a little bit of a higher caliber opponent than Nashville and Chicago. So the Blues had their work cut out for them, but a 6-1 scoreline. I mean, my God. And it's not even like I feel like on the show, we kind of, isolate a stat from game to game, whether it's the faceoffs, whether it was the blocked shots, whether it's the hits. There's really nothing in here that's like stands out to you besides the penalty minutes, but the Blues didn't really capitalize on the power play outside of one goal, I think. And that was Bolduc at the end. So for the Blues, it was really just what lied in between, and the truth was in the details. And it really feels like, as Blues fans and as we've watched this team kind of progress throughout the season, I feel like it's dangerous to get your hopes up, right? But like I put out a tweet earlier today that was kind of showing the similarities between this team currently and 2019 and the similarities in the stretches that they had in success post All-Star game, as opposed to the lack of success before the All-Star game is eerily similar. So it's hard not to get your hopes up, right? But I feel like the impending doom for this team is just, as Blues fans, we're just waiting for it to just all crash and burn, But a 6-1 scoreline against a team like the Montreal Canadiens that are coming in here and trying to punch you in the mouth, they're just trending in the right direction. I don't know what else to say, dude. They're a wagon right now. And not only that, like they've got a rocket engine strapped to them. Like we were talking about this team struggling to win 3 games in a row, like 4 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago. And now they put together a 7-game winning streak. It's just, I mean, this is the best team in the NHL to me right now by a long shot.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And rocket strap is a good way to put it. And I have to imagine that when you made this bet at the beginning of this hot stretch that the Blues are on, I can't imagine that you really thought that there was a great chance that this was going to happen. And I don't want to get ahead of myself. I'm not going to jump ahead, but I got to say the odds for this they keep on climbing the closer we get to the end of the season. And are you getting nervous at all?
Do I look nervous? No. I'm not nervous. Honestly, if it happens, like I'll wear that bald head with pride. Like I think St. Louis sports needs one of its teams in the playoffs. Yeah. That's why I made the bet. I'm like, I just want to manifest it happening, not just for these sports teams, but for the city too. So it's going to look wild. It's going to be crazy. But I'm excited nonetheless. Because like I said, I feel like if the Blues get in the playoffs, like I really don't think there's a team that can go toe-to-toe to them with the way that they're playing right now. So I'm excited as all get out. And someone in the chat said, call me crazy, but the cup run may be on. I'm with you, dude. Like it's hard not to jump on that bandwagon given the success that this team has had, but also the on-ice product. I mean, they're just dominating teams in all 3 phases, like in all phases, every single zone in the face-off dot. Like we got Robert Thomas, 4 points on the night. Broberg, 4 points on the night. Holloway's out there scoring goals and banging bodies. Zach Bolduc, I think, was, well, obviously Nathan Walker leads the team in hits for the game, right? But Bolduc's right behind him. Dude weighs 185 pounds. soaking wet. If you would have told me him as a prospect, he was going to come up and ever be second in hits in a game for the team, I would have called you crazy. He's a goal scorer. He's a playmaker. And the biggest knock on him was, can he be a two-way player at the NHL level? He's played less than 100 games in the NHL, and he's already showing us that he's got no problem doing that. So it's just tons to be excited about. And we're not even touching on the fact that Dvorsky's just like sitting in the press box waiting to get another game. And we saw in the press conferences that Jim Montgomery was satisfied with his game. It's just, riding the hot hands that have got us success so far. And then you add Snuggerud to the mix, and the fact that Joel Hofer's been on fire and can provide rest for Jordan Binnington. It's easy to look at it through rose-colored lenses, but my God, everything is just going right for this team. So it's hard not to be overly excited.
Yeah, we need to almost coin a phrase for what different players have been able to do since Jim Montgomery took over, like the Monty effect or something. We got to be thinking about that. Because, Zach Bolduc had 0 goals until Jim Montgomery took over, and now he has 15 goals. You talk about dominance. I think it's in the last 49 games. Dylan Holloway has he was averaging a point per night just a couple of days ago. I'd have to look and see if that is still where he's at. It might be over that at this point. But I know you put up a stat, posted a stat earlier about what he's done since Christmas, and even since Christmas, he's at a point per game. That's what he's averaging since Christmas. The effect that Jim Montgomery has had on some of these young guys has been huge, and we're seeing that right now. And I agree with you, Jared. The Blues are going full Monty right now. I like that one. We're gonna have to figure out that coin. That statement. We'll have to talk about that one. But
you said the Monty effect. I
like that.
You can also pull out the Monty effect. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Then we'll roll with the Monty effect.
Or the last thing crazy with it and call it Monty Python and his Holy Grail. I don't know, but Monty effect I feel like is way better and it rolls off the tongue. So let's go with that. But yeah, man, the success that Dylan Holloway has had since, and we talked about it on this show, right? It really felt like once Four Nations hit, Jim Montgomery kind of used that as his training camp, right? To really get his fingerprints on this team. And we're seeing the full effects of that right now, which is why you go out and drop everything, be like, sorry, Drew Bannister, love you. Under normal circumstances, this probably wouldn't happen.
Sure.
But Jim Montgomery's our guy. And this is exactly what Doug Armstrong saw and envisioned in his mind when he saw that Jim Montgomery was available. I also went back and looked today at earlier tweets, earlier in the season, when we went and got Jim Montgomery. And I was like, shout out to the Boston Bruins for helping us win a Stanley Cup in 2019 and potentially helping us win a Stanley Cup in this season by dropping Jim Montgomery and allowing him to come to the St. Louis Blues. I don't know how true that will end up being, but it's looking pretty good so far. So I'm going to stick with it. But yeah, man, just like I said, you cannot be more excited about this team right now, because I agree with chat. I agree with you. And I agree with the resounding sentiment around this team right now that they are the best team in the NHL.
The last thing I'll say about it, we got a couple of comments. I got to give them some love. Hey, Richard's saying there's nothing wrong with Bald. We're not saying there's anything wrong with Bald. We fully support what is potentially happening here. And then Jacob, our boy Jacob over here, he's excited to see it, as we all are, to see that dome shine. Ooh, and you got some nice wavy locks.
It's
there
long,
too.
Bro. I'm holding out until we I'm going for a full shave. So I'm not touching this thing, trimming this thing until we just go for the full shebang. So it's getting a little unruly, which is why I'm wearing the hats, but
hey,
it'll go back. It's flicking out the sides and everything.
It'll grow back. It'll grow back. It'll get there eventually.
That's what I keep saying. That's what I keep telling my girlfriend. She's not excited, but it's all part of the game, dude. I gotta do my part. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, that you are. So let's go ahead and let's dive into some of the action that led to what made the Blues so successful. Things were, if you look on the score sheet, right, things seemed pretty even throughout the first period. But it really wasn't. It felt like a game that was being entirely controlled by St. Louis. I know that Montreal, what was it, halfway through the period it took them to get a shot? It felt like the same thing that we have said the last several games for the Blues. full control early, taking over games right off of the puck drop. And then we finally saw it pay off there in the latter parts of that first period when Jordan Kyrou scored his 31st goal of the year. And that's where the offer sheet boys got their night started. Both of them getting assists on that one. Jordan Kyrou continues to stay hot. And Chris Pronger had a great quote on the broadcast that I think was a great statement, where he said that right now Jordan Kyrou is in a shoot first mentality. And he's a guy that we know he has finesse. We know that he is talented in different ways when he has the puck. But right now the mindset seems to be shoot, shoot, shoot. And it's been working out for him.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the goal is a perfect effect of that. I mean, shooting through traffic, I think it was Foxa that kind of provided a screen in front of him, getting bodies in front of the goalies, making it difficult on him. But he's still got to put that shot on net, and it's from a long ways out, right? So for him to have the wherewithal and the vision to kind of drag that shot inside, kind of change his angle, and then throw it on net through a small window, and get the boys running, as they say, was great. But he's been red hot, and it's just him continuing to be like, not just propel this team, but really like come into his own in like a leadership position. Because like we've said, like Doug kind of handed over the keys to the car to Robert Thomas and to Jordan Kyrou with those contracts identical. So like obviously a lot of pressure comes with that. Jordan's done a fantastic job of rounding out his two-way game this season, as indicated by his plus minus numbers, but still hitting the 30 goal mark while balancing his level of play, and his two-way play, I think is crucial for the success of this team. And just leading by example, and dragging Dylan Holloway into the hunt with him. Like obviously Dylan Holloway's a great player and he's having success on his own, but I don't know if he's having the same level of success that he would be having if Jordan Kyrou didn't kind of take him under his wing, establish that chemistry, not just the chemistry that they've built working on their line together, but working after practices together as well. So I don't think there's any coincidence that those two are two of our like hottest players right now, given that the work that they've put in.
No, well, if they're on different lines, then I don't know if anyone can keep up with one of them, So that's why it's so perfect here. They have so much speed. And then you have the captain that seems to kind of be the glue. He lets the young guys, do the showy stuff and make the highlight plays, but he's always in the mix, and he's always an impactful piece of that as well. And you mentioned Holloway. I mean, what was it? Less than 2 minutes later, the Blues had taken a lead back that they had lost. Nick Suzuki knotted it up. It would be the only goal that Jordan Binnington would let in tonight. Good things happen when you put the puck on the net. Good deflection there by Suzuki. Things are knotted up. 60 seconds from that point, it was Dylan Holloway who scored his 24th goal of the season. Really impressive backhand, and Broberg gets another assist on that one. And, I was scrolling through Twitter earlier this evening, and I was like, and I saw this beautiful tweet that said, but pre Holloway goal, Holloway absolutely buzzing. I'll be shocked if he doesn't find the back of the net tonight. You might be a wizard, man, because you completely called that one. So I had to give you your kudos for that. What did you see from Holloway that you were liking so much? I mean, obviously he was phenomenal throughout the game, but you saw it early. What did you see from him?
I thought he was just creating chances off the jump. He put a huge hit on someone on the Canadiens. I forgot who it was, but I couldn't really tell because their face was getting plastered against the glass. So just the energy that he brought, immediately as soon as the whistle blew, that line with Kyrou and Shen, like you said, is always going to provide energy and always going to be a threat to score. But it looked like a Holloway's game just immediately got shot out of a cannon. And he had a couple shots on goal early that I thought were close to going in, creating big chances, all those things. So he seemed to me like he was just jumping off the ice as the most energized, most electric, hottest player on the ice, early. So that's why I was like, I'd be shocked if he doesn't score, because he's just kind of playing at a level above everyone else on the ice. And thankfully, yeah, like you said, every squirrel finds a nut every once in a while, but yeah, you could kind of see the crumbs there lingering of what he was going to accomplish this game. But to like you said, throw pucks on net and make things difficult for the goalie, and Suzuki gets a tip. Holloway gets a tip too, and it's a nasty tip. And the the offer sheet boys link up on another one, dude. It's just, I saw a tweet. I forget who it was from, but I think it was Two Guys, One Cup podcast was asking if the offer sheet by Doug Armstrong was the best acquisition of Doug Armstrong's tenure with the St. Louis Blues.
I was about to ask you that question. I kid you not.
That's
That was
awesome.
going to be my next question. And I got to talking with a soul, thanking Army, he's right there with us about these offer sheets that they were able to make to acquire Holloway and Broberg. Listen, we have seen some phenomenal acquisitions, draft picks throughout Doug Armstrong's career, dating back to, extending Pietrangelo the first time, not we don't want to talk about the second time when he had the chance to. But the acquiring the picks or to be able to draft Jaden Schwartz and Vladimir Tarasenko, trading Tage Thompson for Ryan O'Reilly. There has been a lot of really solid moves in Doug Armstrong's storied career. This one, I don't know if you can make the decision now because we have to see where their careers go. But this could end up being, in my opinion, by far the best one of them all.
Yeah, I think the one that comes closest and the easiest one to say in a knee-jerk reaction is the move for Ryan O'Reilly, right? In the offseason, like everyone was like, I think the Blues are number one center away from, really competing for a Stanley Cup. Obviously, you had Jake Allen in net for the longest time and like kind of getting over that hump of like, is goaltending an issue? Like, can we get consistency? I don't know if you can really give Doug Armstrong credit for the Jordan Binnington experience because from what Jordan Binnington says, he was kind of frustrated with Doug Armstrong throughout that process and had some, aggressions toward him being like, bro, I'm ready. Like, let me up. And like, there was some tug of war there. But I think the Ryan O'Reilly trade, like in a summary of it, it's like a landslide. And obviously it worked out great for the Blues because it directly or indirectly led them to winning a Stanley Cup in short term, right? I think the wild card in that situation is Tage Thompson. Like, and you don't know whether he has the same career that he's having right now with the Sabres, with the St. Louis Blues, but the numbers that he's putting up are insane. Like the guy's a weapon, right? So throwing him into that mix, I think makes things more complicated. Also the fact that you decided to move on from Ryan O'Reilly semi-quickly after that trade and after the Stanley Cup also kind of throws a curveball into things. But like you said, it's short term right now, but if you're going to forecast, what the future of these two players look like, Philip Broberg just had a 4-point night for the first time in his career with the St. Louis Blues. Dylan Holloway's been a menace. He could very well hit the 30-goal mark this season too, the way that he's been playing. And these guys have just been absolutely lights out for this team and are helping to drag this team to the playoffs. Not even drag them anymore. Like we said, this team looks like the best team in the NHL. So obviously if they make the playoffs this year, that's a huge pin in this acquisition. If they win a round in the playoffs, I think that's the dagger to be like, this was the best move that Doug Armstrong made.
Yeah,
Which is crazy.
I hope it ends up being so. It has to be a pretty good move to be able to beat off the guy that ended up really earning you the Stanley Cup. Now, obviously, Ryan O'Reilly was one piece of many on that team, but him and Binnington were kind of those final pieces that led the Blues to that point, and there's no hiding what he did during the playoffs. So, Ryan, there's so many things you could say about that trade, but the fact that we're even talking about this early in their careers in St. Louis is very telling of how good those offer sheets have turned out so far for St. Louis. Let's go ahead and let's keep on moving as we get into the second period. At this point, it just kept going. It just kept adding on and on. The onslaught continued. Robert Thomas scores early in the period. I felt like the third goal of the night for St. Louis really captured how talented Robert Thomas is. It was such a pretty zone entrance. He fakes the pass to Falk. He holds it just for a second and back skates. I don't know if it was a toe drag necessarily, but he held it for a second to the point where he was able to use that traffic to his advantage, and then just a laser. just lays it to the back of the net. Really pretty sequence for Robert Thomas, who also had a really solid night tonight. What did you see from that whole sequence there from Thomas?
I thought the prettiest part of that play was obviously the snipe, because like Robert Thomas is elite and probably,
Oh yeah.
I mean, I keep saying it, but probably one of the most underrated players in the NHL, and especially with the pieces that we have around him, like as they grow together, like I think we're really going to see him blossom and hit a next level of development that, obviously everybody's happy with his game right now, but I think he can take it to another level if he's got some bona fide, studs surrounding him that are, all playing as hot as he is. And I think that we're starting to see implications of that. So the shot is obviously like top tier, right? But there's a pick in there of Zachary Bolduc comes sliding across and kind of flicks the sticks up of the defenders that are in front of Robert Thomas. And I think that's why he kind of hesitates. And as soon as he passes by, he throws it through that traffic and kind of uses all of that commotion in front of him as a screen. So as much as I was impressed with the Robert Thomas goal, that is such a wily, like veteran move by Zachary Bolduc, who again, like it feels like we're going out of our way to just like give him flowers, but I'm really not. Like that's the main thing that I noticed on that play was Zachary Bolduc being like, I mean, he's like 20, 21, like super young in this league. And as the NHLer, like very little game experience in terms of like the full course of things. And he's just flying across doing like the same thing that like 7-year vets do. Like, and I don't know if he's being taught that or like if that's something that you can't teach and he just has like the hockey IQ to like do that for his teammates. But that bodes so well for the future of this team and like all those guys learning from each other. Like this young core, I cannot stress or emphasize like the importance of these young guys, like gaining all of this experience together at the same time. Like, obviously we want the Blues to win the Stanley Cup, but even one round in the playoffs can help those guys like get a playoff series under their wing, be like, okay, this is what it takes to be successful in the playoffs because it's a different beast, because it's a completely different animal of hockey. Like now I know going forward to next time. Or maybe they just figure it out off the rip and they're like, okay, let's just do that every time and we'll win 5 Stanley Cups in our career. Like it's all of it is just so exciting. I just soak it up every time. But that Robert Thomas goal is a perfect example of not just Robert Thomas's high-end skill, but the high-end hockey IQ of everybody on the team, specifically Zachary Bolduc in that instance.
100% agree with you. Couldn't agree anymore. I mean, perfectly said. Looking, you talk about the playoffs and how far not only making it but winning a round could be for St. Louis this year. I mean, there's a lot of veteran pieces on this team that probably won't be here next year. I don't know if Radek Fox is going to be back next year or Ryan Suter, maybe some of them, but probably not all of them, because you have young guys that you want to be getting some of that time. So this could not only this could also be why I say that is because this could end up being even more beneficial for these young guys to give them that idea of what the playoffs are like, because it is different. It is the style of hockey becomes much more physical in the playoffs than it is in the regular season. And that could be something that could be really beneficial for some of those young guys. It helps having guys like, the offer sheet boys that have made a deep run, making it all the way to a Game 7 of the Cup Finals last year. That is beneficial, having that experience, having a Shen that's won a cup, a Binnington that's won a cup. But, some of these guys aren't going to be here forever. So to be able to give everyone a small piece at least of that could go a long way as well in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that bodes well for this team moving forward, and like, I think that's kind of part of their identity. Obviously, like their identity is working so well right now, right? But like off the ice identity, I think it's like we've seen Parayko go down, we've seen Buchnevich go down. Like it is always that next man up mentality for this team, and they've said that over the course of the years. But it's one thing to say it out loud, and it's another thing to like see it in action, right? And I think this team is a perfect example of seeing it in action. So to your point, like if guys don't come back, if guys do go down and get hurt, like we've seen like even Robert Thomas get hurt at times, and this team kind of picks up the slack in his place. So I think having those variable parts and, veteran players, but also like young guys that are like anxious to get in there and get their feet wet, I think bodes well just for the entire identity of this team and hammering home that next man up mentality, because anyone they slot into this lineup, it really doesn't matter right now because they are so hot. Like you could slot in ice cold me and I'll like set fire all of a sudden. You know what I'm saying? Like that feels like it's the mentality of not just a few guys that are like pulling the weight for this team, but everybody, and it's infectious.
Is there a better example of that than Alexander Texier, who scores a goal in his second straight game after being a healthy scratch for 16 games in a row? And, that's a tough thing to ask of someone who hasn't played in a NHL game in that long, and then expecting them to be in the mix for a red hot team. And he looks like he hasn't skipped a beat. I mean, he's looked excellent. Was right on the front doorstep for that goal that he scored tonight. What a pretty move by Cam Fowler to even get the shot off. May have broken some ankles at the blue line, and then gets involved, skates up and puts a shot on, and Texier's right there to finish it. But I mean, like I said, fits perfectly into the example you just said of whether guys are not playing or they are around it. I mean, Alexander Texier is a perfect example, and it brings up a good question that Rob asked here just a couple of minutes ago. You assume that Buchnevich is going to be back on Thursday. With a guy like Texier that's been playing well the last couple of games, a couple of goals, do you mix things up to keep him in the lineup, or do you keep things the way that they are outside of there?
I think that's the easy switch, is you just put Buchnevich back in and Texier sits again. And it's not like you've said. I think Texier's done a fantastic job of, coming in, kind of setting on fire, like being in that net front presence and kind of cleaning up the garbage around the net. I think is the exact role that you want him in, because he is such a big body. So he's done a great job in taking that spot that was made available by Buchnevich. But Buchnevich is your guy, right? And he's making all that money. Like he's a sniper, he's a playmaker. Like he's vicious on the forecheck and the back check when he's fully healthy. Like I think that's just the easy switch for this team, and it's not because Texier's done anything wrong. It's just that that was really the lineup before they had to slot Texier in. So you're just going back to what was already working and something that they're familiar with.
And he makes a great point that this scenario, having a guy like Texier being able to come in, and like you mentioned earlier, Dalibor Dvorsky just sitting there as a healthy scratch, having these guys that the Blues can go to when needed, but not having to lean on them, makes it so much easier to not feel like you have to rush a guy like Pavel Buchnevich, who is making all kinds of money right now for this team, and has been an impact piece, probably not as much as the Blues were hoping he would be this year, but things have moved in the right direction as the team has gotten hot for him, and it's still a huge part of this team. The fact that they're not in a we have to get him back as soon as possible because we're in trouble without him situation right now, or a mode like that, really tells you about the next man up mentality that this team is having right now.
Yeah, and the last thing you want to do is rush Buchnevich back, and then he re-injures himself, and then he's out for the whole playoff series, right? Like that would be nightmare scenario. So to your point, kind of providing him the leniency to be like, hey, like if Thursday comes around and he's still not feeling good, they're not going to be like, listen, Booch, like I get you're feeling sore, but like we really need you in there. Like nobody's going to push him because they know that they can slot somebody else in and still have the same success. Now, that being said, I think Thursday's game against the Predators is going to be a bloodbath regardless. So maybe, honestly, now that I'm thinking about it and talking about it out loud, maybe it would be best case scenario to just keep Booch out another game, because I feel like those guys are going to be out for blood. But I feel like the Blues are too. Like Nathan Walker wants a piece of everybody. He was doing it this game too. It doesn't matter if guys are 2 times, 3 times the size of him. It doesn't matter if it's Wi-Fi on the other end, like a known enforcer in the NHL. He's like, I don't care who you are, bro. Like I'll bleed from the mouth and pop anybody. Nathan
Walker, what are the odds that he's losing another tooth against Nashville? I mean, we have to at least ask the question. I mean, he reminds me, he is like he's like a spark plug for you. I mean, he just does whatever you need him to do. He almost like a Blues version of like a David Eckstein. That's what he reminds me of. He just finds ways to get it done. His play has become so much more effective. He's found a way to stay in there consistently until how long ago was he not a guy that was, a healthy scratch just as much as he was on the ice? So clearly he has figured out a way to be an impactful part of this team. Not that, earlier in the year, Texier and him and a couple other guys were kind of bouncing around for that final spot on the forwards, on the later lines. He's been just phenomenal here down the stretch as well. And another solid game tonight. He had a great game against Nashville, and he's going to be fun to watch this weekend.
He's such a Swiss Army knife too. That's why I love him. And he's small, and I'm kind of short too, so I just resonate with him. It's just like, dude, I'll take on anybody. I don't even care. But like he's had seasons before too where he's had 10 plus goals. So it's not like he's just going out there and running guys because that's all that he can do, right? But I think he's found that, like, hey, if I lead the team in hits this game and I go get in a couple fights or stand up for my guys, like, not only am I playing in more games, but they're giving me more ice time. So I'm just going to keep doing that. That way I stay out of the press box, don't get healthy scratched, and keep helping to find this team success. And they keep rewarding him for it. So he keeps doing it. It's a nice like gesture in that way. But yeah, that WTF line has been phenomenal. I don't think you're going to touch that anytime soon, but I think a big reason for that is Nathan Walker. I don't know if he's like the catalyst for that line because they all kind of provide something different, but just watching him go out there and just kind of like the FU mentality of just, I'm going to go out there and hit anything that moves. And if you don't like it, like, you can just deal with it. If you don't like it, you can drop the gloves. I'll drop them with you and win every single fight. Like, it is so awesome to watch. And I feel like it's such Blues hockey because you don't see that as often in the NHL now with its transition to speed and skill. Like, a lot of times you've got these top 9 lines that are all just like, we're going to go out and score. And then the Blues are like, well, we're going to put together a WTF line of WWE wrestlers, and then you can go put up your 5'5" figure skaters against them and see how well that goes.
I'm thinking of like a scenario where, like, maybe if the Blues are to make the playoffs, bald-headed Thomas now, like what's it going to be if the Blues, for the cup? I'm thinking maybe, and we continue, like, we try to match Nathan Walker, maybe like we're pulling a tooth or something. Like, if the Blues win the cup, that might need to be the next thing if we get that far.
That would be awesome. It would also be cool. Honestly, I don't know about the logistics of working this out, but it would be hilarious if we could somehow get like if we line up everything to like get my head shaved or whatever, if and when they do make the playoffs, and then get a player to do it. That would be hilarious.
Oh man, we might need to talk to the higher rankings of Sports Hub STL to see what magic they can pull.
That'd be so funny.
Maybe one of the guys can help us out there. But boy, would that be funny. Awesome. Final score in this one, 6-1 tonight. Robert Thomas, a goal and 3 assists. Philip Broberg, a goal and 3 assists. Cam Fowler with 2 assists tonight, and then Dylan Holloway, a goal and an assist. They're the leading point getters for St. Louis. Let's go ahead and let's take a look here at the scores from tonight around the NHL. Let's see how Calgary's done. So under 5 minutes to play in Calgary. They're facing off against Seattle, and they are all knotted up at 2. That's one that you're going to want to be keeping a close eye on here down the stretch. The Blues do have some. They do technically hold, as we speak, that second wild card spot, but they do have the Flames have games at hand. I believe is it 3 or 4? I got to look at the standings to remember, but they have several games at hand. We'll look here in a second and we'll clarify. But definitely need Calgary to lose a couple here down the stretch. The Colorado Avalanche leading Detroit 4-1. They're the Blues' next opponent. The Minnesota Wild lose tonight 5-1 as their tumbling collapse continues, Thomas. And all of a sudden, we take a look at these wild card standings, and the Blues are only 2 points out of the first wild card spot.
Yeah. That's pretty crazy too. The Wild, like you said, have just kind of been on a slide. I think they're 4-5-1 in their last 10, and obviously the Blues are on a torrential tear as of recent. So yeah, it's trending in the right direction for the Blues, even if Calgary kind of stays neck and neck with them. If the Wild keep trending down, like it's possible that Calgary and the Blues pass them. So it just bodes well and gives you potentially like an easier opponent if and when you make the first round of the playoffs. So the more that they keep pushing the needle down the stretch, the more it's going to help them. And it's just beautiful to see. But I know in the chat here, Ace6583, who I see all the time. So shout out to you. Thank you for tuning in like every post game. You're the man. I appreciate you. They said that Parayko skated at practice. I did see that. So that's great. But obviously, like we were talking about, kind of the same thing with Buchnevich. The last thing you want to do is rush him back and have him re-injure anything. So as excited as I am about seeing him back at practice, you're going to take the long-term approach with this. And even if they're like, yeah, hopefully we're hoping that he comes back into the fold and plays in round 1. And even if you push that to like, I don't know, round 2, like I'm sure he'll want to play in round 1, but whatever you can do to get that guy healthy, like fully healthy again, I think is best case scenario for this team. And they're proving that they don't need him in the lineup to be the best team in the NHL. Like that's crazy to me that I'm still saying that and actually meaning it, but I really am. Like, this team is on fire.
Another case of the Monty effect. He talked about this, I think it was after the skate today, today, when he was asked about it, and he said, honestly, I saw him out there like once or twice, but he's like, I'm so locked in on what our guys are doing, like during like 5-on-5s and drills and whatever they're doing. He's like, he barely even noticed him. He's still got a long way to go. That's the reason I bring that up. There's still so we got to stay patient. It's great that he is even on the ice at this point. And let's hope that it does end up being less than 6 weeks, but still a long way to go for Colton Parayko. Appreciate your involvement in the chat, Rob, and everyone that has been as well so far tonight.
I think the word that they used for him is, I could be wrong about this, so don't hold me to it, but I thought that I saw that the word that they used was ahead of schedule. So that is also promising. But like you said, let's play it long-term here and make sure that he's good to go for the playoffs if and when that happens, because we need him for sure. He's been a dog this season. So obviously you would love that guy back in the fold, but you don't want to rush it for sure.
Minnesota currently 85 points. The Blues 2 points behind them. Minnesota does have a game at hand on St. Louis. I can't even believe we're talking about Minnesota being in the picture for this wild card mix, but it has been a collapse for them down the stretch here. As we speak, Vancouver's 71 games played. That's 2 less than the Blues. They are 5 points behind St. Louis, and then Calgary has played 69 games. So they currently have 4 games at hand. Here in just a couple of minutes, it will be 3 games at hand. And they are 6 points behind the Blues. So that would be a big one if Seattle is able to upset Calgary, keep the Flames at 77 points. The Blues currently a 5.68 point percentage. Calgary is a 5.58 point percentage. So, but right now, if you're St. Louis, it's control your own destiny. It has to be just focusing on the game at hand and doing what you can control. And that's winning the game that you're playing. And if you continue to do that, you're going to be okay.
Ethan, if it were up to you, I know chat's talking about potential first-round opponents. Would you rather play Winnipeg in the first round, or would you rather play the Vegas Golden Knights, and why?
Oh, geez. I'm going to go with Vegas. I think there's a pretty clear difference. Both are not going to be fun to play during the playoffs. Both of these teams are physical teams, but in my opinion, there's been no team that in the NHL this year that's been better than the Winnipeg Jets. We've seen it in even the way that they, at the beginning of the season, the way that they faced off when they faced off against the Blues. It was just sheer and utter dominance. And I know that St. Louis kept with them in their first game following the Four Nations face-off. But this Winnipeg team is just not one to mess around with. I think with a red-hot team like the Blues right now, it could potentially be interesting. But I like the Blues odds in the first round a lot more if they're facing off against Vegas rather than Winnipeg. Even a red-hot Blues team against a star-studded lineup like Winnipeg has this season, it would be a tall task for St. Louis.
I'm gonna go with Winnipeg actually, but
Really?
here's why.
Yeah, let me hear it.
I think the Blues know Winnipeg a little bit better than Vegas. Like maybe their style matches and their identity that they're building right now matches a little bit better against Vegas because of the physicality and because of the skill makers that they have over there. I think you know Winnipeg pretty well, so you kind of understand like what they're going to come at with you. But the biggest reason I would choose Winnipeg is the pressure, right? Because they're coming off of, like you said, like has been long-term throughout the course of the season, like the most dominant team. So like their fans are thinking Stanley Cup or bust, right? And like if they win the President Trophy, like that's added pressure on top of them because of the curse, right? And then you also take into consideration that it's Jordan Binnington versus Connor Hellebuck again, just like we saw in the Four Nations, the rematch. I think the spotlight on that would also just be awesome for the playoffs as a whole, but also for St. Louis, because people will get to see why we love this hockey team so much and why we're saying it's the best team in the NHL. So all of that pressure is going to be on Winnipeg, also knowing that the last time they faced us in the playoffs and the last time we faced them in the first round was the season that we won the Stanley Cup. So I get what you're saying with Vegas, but like selfishly just for the storylines, but also because of the pressure and because like chat's saying too, Hellebuck kind of struggles in the playoffs. And I would love to put all of that pressure on top of him with also the mindset like in the back of his head being like, can't win the big game kind of thing. I would love to see Winnipeg versus the Blues in the first round. That'd be awesome.
That would definitely be interesting. I'll tell you this much. If it's going based off of, I'm still picking Vegas if it were going based off of who would I rather have to play 4 games on the road against. That whiteout in Winnipeg scares me. It scares the heck out of me, Thomas. So you know what? Let's get there first. Let's get that head shaved, and then we can talk a little bit about who we would rather face off. And the Blues are right there in the mix for it. We appreciate the chat's involvement tonight. It has been a great post-game show. And I got bad news for you guys. Calgary just scored to make it 3-2 with 3 minutes remaining. So that is a big one. So now we're hoping for a late goal from the Kraken to knot things up and potentially get the Flames just 1 point tonight. But definitely not a good sign there for St. Louis. Any final thoughts, Thomas, before we wrap things up tonight?
I mean, like I said before, this game on Thursday against the Preds is going to be an absolute bloodbath. So even if the Blues end up winning that game, like 4-1, 5-1, or which seems to be the theme recently, like especially going up against some of these like bottom dwelling teams. But I mean, even against the Canadiens tonight, like it really doesn't matter who we're playing. Like we're just dominating them. But even if we are dominating that game and it like, you know, it's like 4-0 in the first period, like it's still going to be a must watch because it seems like these teams hate each other and they just want like a piece of each other after every whistle. So that's going to be exciting. Hopefully the Blues come out of it without any injuries because that would be a nightmare scenario. But yeah, I could not be more excited about Thursday, specifically short term, but long term, like the future of this team, the way that this team's looking right now, its established identity, what it'll look like with Colton Parayko back in the fold, like having a tandem of 2 goalies that look like they're on fire right now, like Jim Montgomery behind the bench for the foreseeable future. Like it really feels like everything that I could possibly be stressed about is in like best case scenario mode right now. And that is also scary, but I'm going to soak it in while I can. So I think you guys should too. It's awesome.
Yeah, I could not have said it any better myself. And you said the next game coming up on Thursday, Blues at Predators, 7:00 puck drop in Nashville. And then on Saturday, they head out to Denver to face off against the Avalanche at 3:30. They're back at home next Tuesday against the Detroit Red Wings. We appreciate all of you joining tonight. Thanks so much for being involved in the chat. That is what we want here at Sports Hub STL, is for you guys to be involved in the show just as much as Thomas and I are, and we appreciate you for doing so tonight. That is Thomas Welch. I am Ethan Hannaford, and this has been the Blues Hub postgame show on Sports Hub STL.